Hey everybody, welcome to what has been a really long time, but a kickoff of our Far West Systems Management User Group. Today's topic is what's new in ConfigMgr 2103. If you're anything like me, holy cow, how did we get all the way to 2103? This is amazing. I am your host, Amy Arwidmark. I am joined by Johan Arwidmark and Kent Agerlund, and they will introduce themselves in just a moment. But before we get started, wanted to talk a little bit about how today is going to go. We do have some housekeeping. Number one, yes, the session is being recorded. So that means if you miss anything or if you have a coworker who needs to see something, definitely the recording is going to be available. It takes about 24 hours for GoToWebinar to process the recording, and then it goes live on GoToWebinar. They are limited a little bit on how many people can actually view it on the GoToWebinar platform. So you'll also see a tweet from us once it goes live on our YouTube channel. If you are having technical difficulties, leave the webinar and rejoin it. So if the audio drops out or if you can't see video or whatever, just leave and rejoin. We haven't reached maximum capacity, so you shouldn't have any problem getting back in. And on that note, a quick reminder that the internet is written in ink. So please be professional and courteous in the chat. I do get a copy of everything that you say and do. If you aren't enjoying the webinar, please leave. Sorry. Everything is preserved in time forever. We have had some issues in the past. Please just be kind. All of the chats go directly to me. So if you have any questions, use the Q&A box and I will interrupt Kent and Johan kind of as it seems appropriate to ask your question. You can also ask the question on Twitter using the hashtag for our event. We do love questions. Do not feel like you can't ask a question. There's no question that's too simple or wrong or anything like that. Please feel free to interact with the presenters and with each other. And with that, I will pass everything on to our presenters.
All right, thank you so much, Amy, and welcome everyone once again to this user group meeting. This is the first one this year, actually, thinking of it. Yeah, fun stuff. We did the cloud imaging a little while ago. That was a full day. That was fun. So this one is a little bit more to the point, a little shorter. It will be fun. And I do like to say a note and thank our sponsors, Mirolus. That's a company that Amy started back in 2018, but they are kindly to provide us their GoToMeeting platform so we can host these user group meetings. So thank you for that. Other than that, up for today is a little bit of mix. Since we published the webinar, of course, Microsoft sneaked in a 2004 technical preview release, so we couldn't stop ourselves from sharing some of those updates as well. Otherwise, we're going to focus on 2103 updates, as well as something that me and Kent get asked, if not every single day, so every week, basically, why do this? Why integrate ConfigMgr with Intune? And of course, this is a user group. We just cannot meet in person like we used to do. So, but we still love questions. So questions, just put them in the Q&A and we'll love to answer them throughout this session. We have an hour total. Kent will be joining us for the first half. I'll be around for the second half, and then, yeah, we'll take it from there. So with that, I'm going to change presenter to Kent if I can figure out how to do that.
I have confidence in you, Johan.
You have done a crash course in GoToMeeting.
Yeah.
Do you want to make Kent the presenter? Yes, I do.
See, I can do it if you're struggling. Just let me know.
He actually managed to do so. So you should all be seeing my screen now. Can you just verify that, Amy?
We can see it just fine in Danish, of course, the PowerPoint, and we see yours as like a presenter type node.
Okay, so you don't see the full. You know what? I don't need to be in presenter mode or anything like that. I only have a couple of slides. So let me just make it easier for everybody here. Johan, your introduction was kind of really cool because you said, well, we are going to talk about what's new in the latest release, and then second one you said, so integrating ConfigMgr with Intune, why should we do that? And those two topics are so connected and related. I literally just came out of a 4-hour workshop with a new customer where we want to migrate to the cloud. So the first question is, why do you want to do that? What are the business objectives? They had some really good thoughts around it. Some of them being, the agility. We also, the whole work from home thing. We also want the scalability of the cloud. And then finally, another business objective they had was we want to attract the younger generation, and we can't attract the younger generation with a Dell Latitude, and no offense Dell, but a Dell Latitude that will only operate inside our premises, will only operate together with Active Directory. You simply cannot do that. So those were like their business objectives there. So how is that related to the latest version of ConfigMgr? Well, before you can do all the great stuff, I mean, just like in life, you need to make sure that the foundation is there. And the foundation is not what they had, ConfigMgr version 18.10. And by the way, Windows 10 1809. That's not
Fantastic.
that's fantastic. Yeah, right. So if you want to do modern, do it based on a modern foundation, and that means you have to stay up to date. It's fairly okay if you don't install update the very first day. I won't come hunting you for that. But if you skip like 2 or 3 versions, you at one point you are going to pay for that. Maybe there will be features that you're unable to support. Maybe things that should be super easy all of a sudden takes a bit longer time. So that was kind of the message in there. And I was just saying it here because of what you said there in the introduction, Johan. So it is super duper important. Now, with that, so what kind of new features do we have in ConfigMgr 2103? So I'll be covering a couple of them, the ones that I find most interesting, and then Johan will also be covering the ones related to OSD. And the first one I find super interesting is this one here, my panic button. I remember an MMS a couple of years ago where we had a hackathon, and the team that I was on, actually, we developed the panic button. And the panic button at that time, as I recall, it was you did the oops thing, meaning that you let me just go into to my console here. You went in, software library. You did 7-zip, you did, deploy, you selected the wrong collection, right? So, I mean, we have all done this. So, so you go in, you select all users, or, even worse, you go in and you select all desktop and server clients. Something crazy like this. Now, 7-zip is probably not the worst thing you can do. I could think of many worse applications to deploy in here. Now, the panic button, if I just disable this one here, if I look in my deployments here, then I have it right here. Then I have a disable one. Now, we probably all know, how it works with ConfigMgr and policies. So, I'll download a policy, I'll apply the policy, and then, all the wheels are kind of set in motion there. If I haven't started the installation, then disabling this, will disable the installation. Before we, if we don't do this and then just go in and delete the deployment, or maybe even delete the application in here or something like that, I've seen several times that hey, I already I import the policy. I'm going to do my stuff here, whenever you told me to, but disable this, it will read that policy. It will be prioritized, and then unless it has already begun the installation, it will actually disable. So this one here is the one that I refer to as my panic button here, a neat little feature. But if you ever need it, you'll be so glad it's there. The other one I have in here is one that I call keep control, and that's especially when we work, if we're like 25 in the ConfigMgr console. In those scenarios, as the full administrator, sometimes it's a little annoying when you are kind of you're doing an upgrade to the next version of ConfigMgr, and all of a sudden you hear from folks that now everything is kind of broken, and what we had before doesn't work anymore, or maybe even worse, people are just installing stuff that you don't really want them to install. And what I'm talking about here is the console extensions. So again, just like disable here, this one here is it's not the biggest of features, but it's nice to have. So if I look in features, you will see I have console extensions here, and what I can do now, and you can probably see that up here, I can go in and control these extensions. So when is it that we want to allow these to install, and also revoke approval, approve installation, and so on and so forth. And this is, probably not the biggest of issues we have, but sometimes our console extensions go hand in hand with the ConfigMgr version we have, and then in larger environments, this is kind of neat. So you're controlling the console extensions from one location here, and everything that kind of for me has the word control in the sentence, I as a rule of thumb, I really like that. So that one here, small one, but it definitely comes in as one of my top ones. Then the other one I have in here is worth mentioning is my all the stuff that has finally happened to collections. And when I say all the stuff, then the collection evaluation. This one here we have had as a toolkit tool for years with the collection evaluator viewer, but for many that is a well hidden secret, and if it's not right in your face every single day, you might not pay attention to that. And if I just go back in here, then let's have a look at just a random collection here. Here we are. So let me just zoom in here. So I would say in all of the reviews I have done in the last many years of ConfigMgr environments, we always see performance issues. Obviously if it's a brand new environment, we don't have that many performance issues. But if it's an environment that has been running for like a couple of years or maybe even longer than that, then always performance issues. Those performance issues often related to SQL. SQL not configured according to what we believe is best practice, and we would be the ConfigMgr community. And the other one is often related to collections. So this one here is super important. How many members do I have? What does it take to evaluate this? What happens when I evaluate this? How long time does it take to do an incremental, and so on and so forth? This was introduced in previous versions, but has been improved in 2103. And now if I just go to my full evaluation queue here, in my monitoring node. Now this is a small environment, so I don't have a ton of collections lined up in my queue. But if I go to my full evaluation status, this should be one of the first things that I have a look at. If not every single morning, then at least once a week. And I would go as long as saying this together with my management insights. And management insights here has been in here for a long, long time. But when we talk collections and we talk about, collection evaluations and understanding collections and so on and so forth, make sure that you run these management insights and make sure that you understand, so why do I have some where actions are needed? What is it that they really refer to here? So, if I look at this one here called empty collections, they're telling me, hey, Kent, you have an issue. And by the way, the issue is right here. So I should really go through these, at least once a week, because the ones in here, saying actions needed, they should be 0. And we have, I'm convinced that we have all been in a situation where we go like, holy cow, my OSD is not working. And you go like, OSD is not working. What, can you elaborate a little on that? Yeah, well, you see, when I, when I import a device or whatever you do to kind of start the OSD process, it doesn't pixie boot, or it gets the wrong applications installed or what have you. And I'm not saying every single time, but often it's related to, so how exactly are your collections kind of, related to one another? And in one of the previous updates we got, we also got the view relationship in here. So if I'm sitting down here and it takes, like 48 hours for this one here to be updated, because that's what I have in my collection update schedule, then it has absolutely nothing to do with the OSD process not working. It has something to do with how I designed my collections, and also definitely something to do with my collection rules and use of incremental and what have you. And that's why, in my opinion, all the information we can get in here is useful. All the information. And when you start looking at runtime and you look at membership changes, focus on your membership changes. And also obviously focus on the collection names over here. So if you have a collection called Java 6.2 uninstall, maybe that one is not really being used any longer. so maybe you should do a little cleanup. And that's why I'm adding in the management insight rules in here, because they are telling us exactly what we should be doing. And the cool thing here is, what you do in here will have an impact more or less immediately on performance. Obviously, not if it's just a single collection, but typically what I see in here in a mature environment, we can easily have hundreds of collections in here, where schedule is enabled, but there's no rule and so on and so forth. That's why everything related to collections and related to performance, I'm a fan. Now, there are obviously a couple of other things, like I would say, super neat little things, like when I go to my reporting, I have the ability to go in here and add favorites. Again, that's not why I want to upgrade. No, not at all. But that just helps my day. We have all been in here and said, what's the name of the report? Try to do a search, go into our reporting server, and that doesn't really help us. So this is just minor one, but it makes me happy. So that's why it's actually also being added to the list. On the Community Hub, the Community Hub has been here for a little while, but they keep improving. So if you haven't visited the Community Hub yet, make sure you do that. So this is where you can, you can go in, you can download not only like queries and configuration items, but also like CM pivot examples and what have you. And we can definitely expect more and more to be uploaded in here, and it's completely free. So someone in the community was so nice to say, hey, I have a great idea, let me share it with the world, and did so. And there, I mean, as I said, there are lots of goodies in here, just like clients without a boundary. That one might be good. That might explain why they're unable to download software, in Fort Worth, for instance. And I've seen that. I've seen areas that all of a sudden didn't exist boundary-wise. So this one here, the Community Hub, always take a look in here. So right after you check your collections, obviously. Now, Johan will come back. He will take some of the other ones. Then there was a really, integrating ConfigMgr with Intune. Does it matter? And now if you picture this coming flying in, and then after that the yes would come flying. That was kind of my PowerPoint animation there. Yes, it matters. Why does it matter? It matters because more and more of what we do is, for me personally, kind of on the road. It matters because more of what I do is super integrated with security. And when I talk, or when we talk security, when we talk, let's just go in here. When we talk about being agile, being scalable, figuring out what's really going on, we need the power of the cloud. That is for me. I know we have been saying this for the last many years, but for me now, it is super obvious in all the projects that we do. Now, when we talk about integrating Intune and ConfigMgr, we typically talk about what is called Tenant Attach, and we talk about co-management. Now, co-management, as some of you know, is the ability to follow kind of two leaders, one being Intune, the other one being Configuration Manager, and my device here is co-managed. So when my device here is co-managed, some of the benefits that I have for this device here is, let's just have a look at that. My compliance policies. You cannot, when we compare ConfigMgr and the Intune, you cannot beat the compliance policies that we have in Intune. They are super easy to set up, and for me that is important because I have to report on that. In Denmark, where I live, we have regulations saying, prove to me that you have firewall, prove to me that you have antivirus, prove to me that you control administrative permissions. So we have these 7, some would consider kind of basic regulations that we need to apply to, but you also have to prove it. And the cool thing in here is I can create a compliance policy that will actually check for most of those settings, encryption and so on, not all of them, but most of those settings. And then all I need is just a report saying, hey, Kent, here you are. Could I do the same without being, Intune integrated? Definitely, because in SCCM, we can just create a configuration item, meaning we can do everything. Literally, with a CI, we can do everything. But this is just so much easier. And when I do it for my Windows 10 devices, I can do the very same thing for my iOS devices and my Android devices, because guess what? They're asking kind of the same questions about them. obviously, not exactly the same questions, but it's like, what OS do you have? That could be part of my compliance policy. And also, do you update your devices regularly? And how about security? Another thing, and this has been, I would say, I've been waiting for this one. I don't know, Windows Update for Business is here, but I'm really waiting for this one to, and I'm saying something, and I know this is being recorded here, but I want this to work for the enterprise, because once this really works for the enterprise, then I don't have to approve my updates. I don't have to approve my feature updates. I don't have to approve my quality updates. All I need to do is kind of define a policy and then put all of my trust in Microsoft. This is actually how my device is being updated today, and have been updated for the last year or so, using a Windows Update for Business. Meaning, I don't need, or I don't use ConfigMgr for that. I still use ConfigMgr for my server updates and for some of my critical production devices. So I have some devices controlling robots and what have you. So those are still being managed update-wise by ConfigMgr, but the rest, nope. Just let Windows Update for Business handle that. And then the only thing that I really do is just the monitoring. Now, so co-management, the ability to follow, two different management authorities. Then we also have Tenant Attach, and Tenant Attach has absolutely nothing to do with co-management. So Tenant Attach is taking my devices that I have within the ConfigMgr console and making sure that we have that information in Endpoint Manager as well. So the Endpoint Manager Admin Center, that's the web console that some of us has been waiting for the last 15 years. And in here, I have some what I would call, daily administrative features that I need. And some of them being like applications. I mean, that's probably still the #1 feature in ConfigMgr, applications. So what I can do in here is I can go in, I can install my applications, I can reevaluate my applications and all of that good stuff. And this will then happen in real time. So, communicating with the admin service, making sure we are using the fast channel, and then, all of that. So obviously my device has to be online. So this device here is just not online. But maybe I should see if I have another one just for the sake of a demo here. This is the one that I'm currently using. The other one is in my backpack. so we can't do that kind of magic yet. But if I just go ahead, do the install of 7-zip again. So now that one is being initiated on my device. And if I look here in my CM trace, what I'm looking at here is I'm just looking at my script and I'm looking at my state message, because very soon when I get the information, when my config manager has been communicating with me, it looks like something is going on right now, then I will just be able to see this. And this is super neat. And couldn't I do that from within the console? Yeah, absolutely. But then I need to have the console installed. Now I don't, everybody will have a browser, right? So the ability to work from everywhere, all of a sudden I also have that with the Intune config manager integration here. Now there are definitely a lot of other, very good reasons why I do want to integrate Intune and config manager, but these two, Tenant Attach, the ability to go ahead and use admin center, and then co-management. Those are the top reasons. And with co-management, I can move my workloads over, one at a time, being in complete control, having the ability to test, feel comfortable before, I move the next workload over. Yeah, so that was, I guess, trust me when I say I could go on forever here, but I know Johan really also wants to have a say here, and that was like my 25 minutes of fame, Johan? Should I?
Can you please make me a presenter? And thank you again for joining. I know you have a very, very busy schedule, so I appreciate you taking your time
Yeah,
out of that one
absolutely.
for us. So
I will
great
make you a
stuff.
presenter.
All right.
There you go, sir.
Thank
And
you
enjoy
so
the
much.
rest. And if there is any questions, I'm comfortable. You can answer all of them. Otherwise, you know how to reach me. But yeah.
I know where to find you. Yeah. All right.
Enjoy
Thank
the
you,
rest
Kent.
of the day.
Have a good
Yeah,
night.
bye. Bye.
Bye. All right. Let me get that little window out of the
Johan,
way.
before you get going, there's still one for real unanswered question in the chat.
Yeah, I saw them coming in. Excellent. Thank you for those questions. We love questions. I think I can answer two of them like right away that came in. One was from one was Frank wonder if Kent was controlling robots. I don't think he does, but it would not surprise me if he had that capability, that skill. He's pretty good. Let's see what else came in. That was just a comment, someone having to leave the meeting, but going to watch the recording later. Fantastic. And one question I was just typing in the answer to while Kent was presenting here was from Christian, asking if I've seen any issues with reporting after upgrading to 2103. I have not yet. I've seen what you see here on the screen, that I got some duplicate reports that I had to go in and delete, but the ones that were not duplicate actually worked just fine. But Christian, ping me on LinkedIn or Twitter, and I'll ask around and see if someone has stumbled across that. 2103 is still quite new, so yeah, cool. All right, I think that was all the questions that came in. Now, back to what I consider the goodest stuff or the best stuff, and that's of course the changes related to imaging in both 2103 and also 2104 technical preview. So I figured I could start backwards because Kent did mention the community hub that is available in both current branch, but also in the technical preview. It's the same type of community hub. And as you see here, there are tons of different things that you can download that simplify things. But even if you start to search for things like a sequence, this one, for example, just be able to have an extension where you can literally right-click a sequence and just show me all the status messages right away without having to go into monitoring node and queries and create a query, figure out the sequence ID or package ID and whatnot. This is just a very simple way of doing it. So search for OSD. There are some other good stuff as well. For example, just making sure that all your distribution points having the right block size to speed up the process. Something I think is worth mentioning here is that these block sizes, they are not just for the built-in WDS responder or the one that we have for like 15 some years now, but also for the new native ConfigMgr pixel responder, meaning if you have a distribution point that is using this one here, this little friend where you have it without WDS, it will also honor the same block size values. And there was actually a question in the chat earlier if I've seen any issues with this after an upgrade to 2103, and yes, I have. What happened in that scenario was that I actually was a pending reboot on the DP after the binaries had been updated. So it just, normally you don't have to do that, but this time you had to. Why that is, I'm not sure, but that solved the problem with that pixel responder for me. So, all right. Another very good question that came in through the chat was obviously, you've probably seen that Microsoft made a support statement now in 2103 saying that HTTPS is required going forward. HTTP only is no longer supported. That is true, but you don't need to implement full PKI. The enhanced HTTP is enough. So that checkbox on the site is enough to be fully supported in terms of security requirements on the site itself. And for me, that checkbox is basically a no-brainer. Because going full PKI, that requires a little bit of planning and actually adds a little bit of overhead to the platform as well when you do administration and troubleshooting of it. Luckily, it's not exactly new. It's been around for a very long time. So a lot of resources out there to be able to find information on how to do this. Niall, I'll argue and say that has the best SSL guides out there at the moment. He just did a fantastic job doing like it was like 6, 7, 8 part series on just everything that you need to think of when you go through a full PKI implementation of ConfigMgr. So that's a nice weekend read for you guys if you haven't seen those guides. So windowsnoob.com is the website where he keeps those, and just good stuff. All right, so one of the OSD changes that was done in 2103 was relating to the servicing dashboard. So here, just to give an example, here I have, this is a 2010 environment. And you can see that I have the Windows 10 usage and the Windows rings and some shortcuts to create my servicing plans, etc. Still have the error codes down here that we're used to. And starting with 2010 was actually the first version where if you're deploying Windows 10 20H2, the setup diag tool is actually included now in setup. So it can also report information up to ConfigMgr about what's going on here. But if I go over to my 2103 lab, as a separate lab, and go to the same node, you can see that the dashboard is just a little bit different here. So I'm going to pick my all systems collection just to get some more systems in. But the rings are gone that were here in the middle, and here you see the different versions. And now we have a separate little half of a donut to show us just some info about the latest feature update that we have currently. So that's kind of nice. And speaking of feature updates in your sequences now, so if you go ahead and create an upgrade sequence, so I'm going to create a sequence, going to pick an upgrade one, demo upgrade 20H2. Perfect. I can't even spell 20H2. That is great. Of course, usually run as a high performance. And so this wizard haven't changed. So I can pick my normal upgrade packages like ever. I can pick an index, that I want to have in the drop down here, and life is good. But now what I can do after I have created the sequence is that I can find it. And I can edit it. And in the upgrade step, I now have the option of selecting down here from any upgrade packages that I have downloaded as part of the upgrade classification in ConfigMgr. So these are, I'm not sure if I have any on this machine, I have on the other lab, but let's see what I have here. I think this one is empty. I have one here I can show you. So go back to this one here. I actually spent some time doing some benchmarking testing. Basically, how much faster is it? It was a nice weekend. So this one here. As you can see here, I have picked one of my feature updates that I downloaded as part of this process. And I wrote a blog post about it. What would the difference actually be? Why would you do this? Well, first of all, they are smaller. So if I go to my blog, it should be one of the recent ones here. So I basically spent, I think it was a Saturday, with a stopwatch and a network monitor tool and compared the upgrade speed for different type of package content from my sequences. And what I found as a summary, to just make this very, very short, is that while the ESD packages are smaller, they are about a little bit over half a gig smaller even than the highest optimized OSD Builder made package. And it's almost well over a gig smaller than the default media from Microsoft. The down levels time was actually a little bit slower to install because it has to unpack and decrypt the file. But depending on your network speed, you actually may prefer the smaller size versus the slightly longer installation time. I haven't done the same benchmarking on the latest release of this in 2104, but I'm expecting these times to go down quite heavily because when I do normal servicing outside of a sequence, it does not take 38 minutes in the down-level OS, meaning the full OS before the upgrade. Let's see, were there any shiny questions coming in?
I can read them to you if you want.
Yes, please, that would be very helpful.
Is the built-in new WSUS maintenance enough to keep WSUS happy/happier, or is there still a need for heavier stuff like PowerShell cleanup scripts?
So there is unfortunately still need for some general housekeeping. I did put together a summary during what I refer to like the update week back in a few years back. But basically, there was a time where WSUS was not a happy camper due to some changes and due to some issues. And that ended up in a fairly long blog post. So if you search my blog for WSUS, you have an entire section around housekeeping. But in general, in addition to selecting the options in ConfigMgr for this, which you should do, you still need to have some sort of maintenance. And I like the script from Brian Dam. I like that platform a lot. He put together some really nice maintenance scripts that allow you to not only decline stuff that should be declined in addition to what ConfigMgr does, but also allow you to combine software update groups, etc. A lot of organizations, they create them monthly, but by the end of the year, it's kind of time to actually wrap them up into a yearly package. And yeah, that there is some need. There is a good one from, what's his name? He works for the big bank, Jeff something. He also have a script that can help doing this. I might have it listed in my post. Yeah, Jeff Carrion. So I do recommend combining what ConfigMgr has built in with some of the community solutions for managing WSUS updates, because WSUS is kind of a it's been around for a while, put it that way, and it needs a little bit of love to behave better. All right. So
Next question. You good?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
All right. Do you need HTTPS for Mbam integration?
Actually, I got an email about that. Just I like to say that the short answer is no, but I haven't done that setup myself. But I did have a conversation with someone recently about it. See if I can find that real quick. Otherwise, I will simply reach out and answer that one a bit later.
Be a good blog post if you can't find it. Anyway, that's the last question. I'm going to mute.
So, well, according to that discussion we had then, it was not a requirement. But Niall was kind enough to provide a link. So The same as the Niall Brady that did the fantastic PKI guides, also has done a lot of work with the new Mbam integration and ConfigMgr. So is there a way I should be able to put this in the chat? I think I have the power link to Mbam requirements. Try to paste that in, send it to everyone. Why can I not do that? Do you have the power to do that, Amy? Send a link to everyone?
I do.
All right, I'll put it in the organizers chat and you can put it out there for everyone else.
I will add that as the answer to that question and broadcast
There we
it to
go.
everyone.
Thank you. All right. So back to changes in 2103. So you probably know by now that if you guys create upgrade sequences or validation sequences, by default, ConfigMgr has its own little readiness check for upgrade, things that has to be there for the validation or the upgrade to complete. Like you have to be in power, you have to be wired, and it cannot be wireless, stuff like that. But you can also, of course, set in a stupid memory requirement right now, like 8 gigs. And so I have a validation sequence that requires that all machines have 8 gigs of RAM, which is way more than they actually need. But my VMs has only 4, so obviously they will not match this requirement. So if I make this change to the sequence, and I count to about 10 because I've learned that in my lab it takes ConfigMgr about 10 seconds to generate a policy on the server. And then, of course, I can go to one of my clients and download that generated policy. So I'll go to one of my clients here. This client is in one of those collections to which I have deployed that validation sequence. And if I refresh the policy, I should have that new setting that I applied. And I know that you can do this directly in Software Center, but I'm old school. I've been doing this my entire life. So instead of going here and sync the policy, I usually still open up the control panel applet. This is the shortcut command to do it. And then I just sync the policy. And if you don't like that, you can do it in PowerShell, which is also very shiny, of course. But anyhow, I downloaded that new policy, and now I'm going to try to run my validation sequence one more time. So I'm going to try it. And obviously, this machine has only 4 gigs of RAM, and it failed right away. But the cool thing here is I can now click inspect, and I can see which value that it failed on. And it did fail indeed, that my memory is below 8 gigs. So rather than just forcing you to go into the log file and try to figure out, okay, what is it? It gives it right away on the screen. So that's a nice little feature, I think, in the environment. For those
We had
of
a
you,
question come in during this. Should the pre-pilot upgrade for clients start right away, or is the scheduled task always random, or is it defined by any other parameter?
can you repeat that question one more time?
The pre-pilot upgrade for clients, does it start right away, or is the scheduled task always random, or is it defined by any other parameter?
So in my experience, even if you have a number of days set for client upgrades in general, most of the clients will be upgraded within the first day. And of course, that can be a significant load unless you're using peer-to-peer or anything for offloading that. But I've seen most of these kicking on fairly quickly, even though if you have a larger window set for it. For the pre-pilot ones, they will basically go more or less at the same time. Usually you don't have too many of those in the environment. Not sure if I have this one set up for that. I think I still using, no, I have all my upgrading to production right away. So I hope that answered the question. Basically, it will be quick.
Yeah, and we also had someone come in and say that they had tried to implement Mbam a few weeks ago and they could only do it in HTTPS mode. So going back to that question that was right before this.
All right, thank you for that clarification. Perfect, appreciate that. I must have read that email not entirely correctly then. But that's a setup I haven't done myself, so I'll leave it to the documentation link that Amy posted out there from Niall.
Is there any option to deploy dynamic updates while deploying feature updates?
Yes, there is. Adam Gross has a good blog post about that. Because that is still configured as part of the setup config in a file. And customers who are not using sequences to do upgrades, but using servicing plans instead, they are usually using this one to control the behavior, add in drivers and other things that you normally would use the sequence for. And that one you can enable dynamic update in, and then it will do it. And this is something you want to do for feature updates because Microsoft releases these updates only like once or twice per year. And in my opinion, that is way too slow. When you use sequences, you can use normal packages. You can update them every other week if you want, or at least monthly. But the feature updates, they are not released very often. And this is more like it's a key thing to have. For example, last year, there was a lot of customers being a little bit surprised when they deployed an older feature update to a newer patched Windows. So they were having a 1909 or 1809 with that October patch, and I will deploy a feature update from May, and they lost all their certificates on that was a bit of a bummer. But those ones that either updated the package to the same patch level or that have dynamic updates, so these was sort of bringing down when they started, they did not experience that type of issue. So it's kind of key to make sure that the media you use for servicing, no matter how you do it, is as updated as it possibly can be in your environment. We simply see it reduces the number of failures that kicks in. All right, other minor changes for those of you doing refresh and replace scenarios. Microsoft bumped up now the encryption for the state migration point to AES-256. Something to know about that, if you have ongoing migrations, wait with updating those clients to the new version until you completed the process. Otherwise, they won't be able to restore the backup, and it's not the end of the world. You can do it manually still with load state, but just, yeah. See what else. Yeah, some new shiny commandlets for PowerShell, of course. These two guys here. Probably stumble across this if you've been doing imaging for more than about 4 minutes in your life, that there is always a chance that you get in duplicated hardware addresses, or either a GUID or a MAC address. And now there is a commandlet you can simply run to show you if you have any of those. So this is in addition to run the ConfigMgr report or a query. You can just open up the PowerShell prompt and run these, and it will tell you. Kind of nice feature. I like it. So that was technical preview 2103. Oh, sorry, the ConfigMgr 2103, and then we have 2104 technical preview that was literally just released. Upgraded one of my labs to it. Must have been Friday or so. But this is the one here, and not too many changes. But for those of you that are using what Kent talked about before, when you use the Tenant Attach to manage your different devices, you will see that there will be options eventually here to do BitLock recovery keys from Tenant Attach clients. Right now in the preview, that is only available in the console, but it will be available eventually once I flight those changes up in the admin center. So that's pretty cool. Another changes for Tenant Attach is that you now, when you're looking for hardware inventory on your different machines, you can now also get history or historical data. So you can basically select which data you want to look at. So this is exactly like the behavior in the console when you right-click your device and do like a Start Resource Explorer, where you can see the different time slots for or the times for a inventory taking place. You will have the same option here in the tenant. And one thing that I just came across, like, okay, offboarding clients. It's like, yeah, I just assumed that was always there, but it turned out it actually wasn't. But it is there now. So you can, if you have Tenant Attach clients and you want to revert that to want to do something else, then you now have the option of offboarding a hierarchy from ConfigMgr. And for those of you working with clients in primarily Asia, of course, you know that either in PE or during imaging, those kind of drivers, keyboards can be interesting to work with. But I now had added in support for those labeled keyboard drivers during imaging so that you can use all these fancy keys on these types of keyboard. So that's cool. There are some changes in the support center tools, basically naming changes. And when you work with software updates, you can now actually right-click a deployment and force a software update evaluation directly from the deployment status in ConfigMgr. So that is pretty cool. And the final one, well, final two, I should say. In addition to a bunch of new commandlets for ConfigMgr, they have a new version of CMTrace. And I think it was Jürgen that tweeted about it this morning, or maybe the other yesterday. See if I can find his stuff. If you're not following Jürgen on Twitter, you should. He's a good gentleman to follow. Yeah, he did some comparison with the new CMTrace in TP2104, and a large log file was 8 seconds versus 32 seconds in the older version. So Stefan Roll did a similar comparison the other day. Shorthand, the new CMTrace is much faster than the old one. And can you copy this one? Yes, you can. You can snatch it from the 2104 environment and update it in your environment. And there was actually even, I wonder if that one's still available. I have to check the community hub. There was a little solution for automatically keeping that one up to date. Oh yeah, CMTrace update. To always make sure that you have it's a script that you can download, but it makes sure that the CMTrace is always updated on the clients. So this one is nice too, by the way. Very handy. All right, did we have any more questions?
No, there's nothing new.
All right. Then on behalf of the user group, we're up on the hour. Thank you so much for joining. As Amy mentioned before, the recording will be available at the latest tomorrow. And any final words there, Amy?
Thank you so much for joining. As always, we really appreciate your time and all the questions and everything. Stay tuned for the recording to be posted, and we will definitely, as we always promise, try to do these more frequently. So maybe tweet us if you feel like it's been too long since we've done something. And thank you guys.
Thank you. Bye.